Okay, you should all now see the presentation that I'm going to be talking through. Angela, can I just confirm that you can all see that okay now? Excellent. Many thanks. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Summers. I'm Strategic Director of Transport East. I'm going to talk to you this evening about the role of transport in the East of England and hopefully bring you some insights from some of the work that we've been completing over the last few months with partners from Uttlesford and across the region on our wider transport strategy. My first slide here, I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction to Transport East. I'm not sure how many of you will be aware of us, but we are one of 7 subnational transport bodies across England. The government has outlined their aspiration for subnational areas to come forward with clear strategic approach for transport and a set of priorities. And Transport East, covering Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Southend and Thurrock, is one of those 7 subnational transport bodies. We are a partnership, so we're comprised of the 5 transport authorities, Essex being the one in this part of the world, 24 district authorities, including Uttlesford, who is a member of Transport East, our 2 LEPs, local enterprise partnerships, 3 chambers of commerce, including Essex Chamber of Commerce, Highways England, Network Rail and DfT. Our role is to develop a transport strategy to 2050 that sets out the aspirations of all of those partners and sets to government what are our investment priorities over that period of time to make sure that we get the transport system that we need to achieve our outcomes. We speak with one voice for our subnational area on transport, and we help to accelerate and improve the delivery of transport mechanisms. As Strategic Director, I joined the organisation as the first member of staff back in April last year. And as a body, we've been up and coming and making sure that we have a strategy in place, and we're aiming to go out to public consultation on our strategy later in 2021. What I'm going to present today are some of the findings from those discussions we've had with partners over the last couple of months that have really given some insights into some of the things that local people are thinking, that bodies across the region are thinking, that national government are thinking. And I'm really hopeful that some of those insights will be helpful for your discussions in Uttlesford, because I think there's a lot of alignment between the various objectives. So how did we start off the piece of work that we've done over the last couple of months to really understand what is it we're trying to achieve from transport? We've had a very strong look at what those central government priorities are. And this slide here represents in word format what are the big themes that national government cares about with regards to transport right now. The bigger the word, the greater the number of times it appears in a national transport strategy document. Decarbonisation and climate action, it has really come up over the last couple of years as a key priority for central government. This has been set out both in the Department for Transport's plan for decarbonisation, I'll come on to that a bit later on, and more generally including the work that Number 10 have been doing on it as well. So for us going forwards, decarbonisation is absolutely crucial. Some other key themes are coming through here at a national level. So economic growth and jobs, particularly as we come out of COVID over the next few years, what is it that we do to support that economic growth, and levelling up as well. This has been a term coined by central government over the last few years with a focus on the north of England, but really from our part of the world, we need to have a perspective on what that means for our local plans and transport strategies, as well as public health. Obviously, COVID-19 has brought that to the centre of our attention, but what do we need to do from a transport perspective to make sure that our populations are healthy going forwards? So at a national level, these are the types of things that are really coming through strongly. Now, we've compared those against priorities for local levels. So we've spoken to all 24 districts across the east of England, including Uttlesford, the local enterprise partnerships, the Chamber of Commerce, and what is coming through their strategies. Some similar themes, so climate action. A number of local authorities have set climate emergencies, but there's much more of a place and local feel here. So local jobs, local development, housing a really important issue for local people, as well as some of those demographics around the population. So a real sense here that we've got these national level objectives around levelling up, around economy, around decarbonisation, but then at a local level, there's much more of a sort of a place-based approach that people care about in terms of jobs, local development, housing, etc. And we need to be aware of these two and any tensions between them as we develop our transport strategy. So the early work we've done on our transport strategy has been to identify what are those wider outcomes that we want to achieve through transport. It's worth remembering that transport is an enabler to wider outcomes. It's not a goal in itself. And we need to be really clear about what it is we're trying to achieve. And that goes for national level strategies. It goes for subnational that I'm doing at the minute, and also for local level. Now, at a Transport East level, the outcomes on the left-hand side are those which our local partners have come up with as those outcomes we really need to achieve. They are reducing carbon emissions from transport, promoting and supporting that diverse economy, enhancing the built environment, supporting locally important growth areas, and a real emphasis here on rural, urban, and coastal and the distinctiveness between them. Promoting active, healthy lifestyles, supporting our energy sector, and skills attainment, retention, and social inclusion. And all of these need to be in focus as we develop our transport strategy. The remainder of my presentation is going to go through those in a bit more detail, but on the right-hand side here, what we have are those 4 key themes from a Transport East perspective that wrap all of those up. Decarbonisation is fundamental to our future transport strategy. Global gateways for the east of England. We have 13 ports and 3 airports, a significant amount of transport implications arising from those, a lot of economic growth associated with them. They need to be front and centre as we're thinking about what is our transport strategy going forwards. Multi-centred growth as well. We have 2 cities and 76 large or medium-sized towns. We have quite a polycentric settlement pattern. We need to be working out how do we connect those towns and cities, including to Cambridge, including to London as well, outside of our region. And what is it that we need to ensure that connectivity between them is world class. And then last on the list, but certainly not last in terms of priority, are energising those coastal and rural communities. I think it's felt that in this part of the world, a lot of the transport challenges arising are those associated with the rurality of the region. And this isn't as high up on the government agenda as we'd like it to be. So we're really focused on making sure that this comes across in our strategy as we bid to government for future funding. So in the sort of the final part of my presentation, I'm just going to go through each of those themes in more detail, because I'm really hoping that these provide some of the issues that you might want to talk about in the discussion session. So addressing the causes and impacts of climatic change. So this is significant for transport. Government has published its 10-point decarbonisation plan. In the east of England, we published a study in November that showed that transport is the largest contributor of CO2 in the east of England. 41% of all emissions. It's a significant issue for us. And again, we are one of those regions that stands to be most impacted by things such as sea level rise if some of those worst impacts occur over the next 40 to 50 years. So we need to be thinking, what is our strategy for that? The work that we've done so far is pointed towards 3 broad areas: mode shift away from the private car to more sustainable modes, the development of alternative fuels, what is the role of electric and hydrogen in terms of powering our cars going forwards, and then reducing the need to travel overall, so the enhanced role of digital technology, automation, etc. How much does Uttlesford want to dial up and dial down on those 3 types of policy measures? And a really interesting topic to discover later on. In terms of promoting and supporting a diverse economy, one of the main case for investment that we put forward to central government is the role that our region plays in that wider UK economy, a £73 billion economy that we have here. But one of the key issues that our stakeholders have identified is the poor connectivity, particularly east-west. So if you think of some of the connections from here to those western or eastern parts of the country, quite poor, I guess, compared to some of those north-south routes. But again, those north-south routes really need to be supported going forwards. And thinking again in this example, things such as the West Anglian Main Line, absolutely fundamental. As well as those longer distance trips, it's working out what are those first mile, last mile options and reducing that high car dependency. So can we develop a future economy based on more sustainable transport going forward? Again, a key theme that we need to be tackling as we go forward. And then you focus more on locally important centres, so rural, urban and coastal. Now, across the region, we're predicted to grow by about 300,000 new homes in the next 15 years, significant. And the way we deliver that is going to impact significantly on how our transport system is going to react. And we need to plan both the planning and the housing and transport together in order to make sure it's successful. Now, a number of considerations here. Is that growth clustered or dispersed? Clustered growth obviously supports more sorts of mode shift. Dispersed, what might point towards a decarbonisation strategy more around electric vehicles. So some very different outcomes in terms of transport, depending on the types of growth. Mode shift needs to be considered here. Quality of life, so air quality and safety, key transport indicators that need to be considered in terms of those locally important centres, as well as that government objective of levelling up. And we need to try to understand what is our version of levelling up in the east of England and in Uttlesford. Now, just going through some of the final outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So supporting skills attainment, retention and social inclusion. As we've spoken to partners, we've spoken to a number of businesses, and they're particularly concerned around the younger generation in terms of access by younger people to skills, to training, to new job opportunities, particularly post-COVID, if there's a greater working at home environment, not as conducive to young people learning how to develop in the workplace and also how to access the workplace by non-car means. This is a key thing that our partners are quite concerned about, and obviously one of the things that we'd probably advise Uttlesford to consider as they're developing the transport strategy and approach. In terms of promoting active and healthy lifestyles, obviously this has taken an increased emphasis following the recent pandemic, the ability of people to lead healthy lifestyles. Active travel is one of the easiest ways that people can get physical activity. Public Health England advocates that everyone does 20 minutes of physical activity a day. Walking is the easiest way to do that. Cycling as well, increasingly popular option for doing that. If we invest in walking and cycling facilities where it's viable, you can have a really positive impact on reducing the health costs, the risks of key diseases such as heart and circulatory disease, and the risk of early death. The key barrier to cycling is the perception of safety. A number of surveys taken place across the UK outlining that one of the main reasons people don't cycle or walk is the perception of it's unsafe, the lack of segregated routes or the lack of off-road provision. And so one of the things that government have done in this area over the last year is to develop their gear change strategy, which advocates a doubling of walking and cycling over the next 5 years with 2 billion available to local authorities to bid for. Now, it might be one of the things that we're thinking about here. How do we start to invest more in walking and cycling? And how do we interact with that government policy and that funding pot to allow us to increase the number of people that are able to walk and cycle? Supporting the energy sector is a unique theme for the East of England. It's probably more directed towards the coast. But over the next 20, 30 years, we are going to be the biggest providing region of electricity in the UK, an exporter, and we need to use that to our strength. And one of the ways in which the Transport East Forum really wants to take this forward is using this status to shift the debate to make sure that we are that exemplar region in zero carbon vehicles. By 2030, the government is going to pause and stop all sale of petrol and diesel cars. So we've got about a decade to work out what do we do as a solution to that. And it feels that for a lot of trips that take place in rural areas, it might be electric vehicles, alternative fuel cars that provide some of the answer, but the infrastructure needs to be in place to support that, both in people's homes and also in the destinations that they're going to. I won't dwell too much on this slide, but it goes without saying that protecting and enhancing the built and natural environment is a key priority as well. A number of protected areas across the east of England, and we need to be mindful of this as we develop our transport priorities to ensure we're continuing to enhance those areas that we have across the east of England region. And then this is the final slide in terms of theme. So not an outcome, but the increased use of digital connectivity as an enabler of all of these outcomes. So we've thought of transport traditionally in the past as roads, as rail, as walking, as cycling. Increasingly, I think over the last 10 months, we've seen that we can access services, we can work from home, we can shop, we can do other activities by good digital connectivity, and an increased awareness and acceptance of this as a practice going forward. So one of the key considerations here is this a part of your strategy going forward? And if so, how much? And what do you need to do to support that? So super fast broadband, 5G in rural areas, for example, how much does that play a part in your strategy? Because it does feel from speaking to partners that increasingly this could be part of the solution that we're looking at going forwards. So, Angela, that concludes the presentation. Hopefully it gives a bit of food for thought for colleagues here to be able to talk through now. I've got after this the generic slide that you've provided in terms of the questions. Angela, I'll hand over to you to sort of take over from now. I'm happy to answer any questions now or move forward to that slide that we've got around the wider discussion. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to you.
Thanks very much. Do you want to put the slide up now, Andrew, and we'll just have a look at that? I think everyone